The question is, what do you do when you are in the situation when October 7th has happened?
It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how brutal the Israeli government's been to you. You still can't just go kill teenagers at a festival. Like, it's not just a justified response. Sure. So I completely agree with you on that. But then also, as I said before, cutting off aid to the civilian population who's war-torn after 2 years.
How much aid is Russia providing to Ukraine? Right?
Hold on.
Russia's not providing any aid. And no one's saying, oh, why aren't they providing aid?
Yeah, because also nobody's defending what Russia's doing. Nobody here is saying, like, well, okay, maybe not nobody.
Have you been to Austin?
Okay, fair enough. So,
watch Dave Smith squirm when Konstantin Kisin asks him this. Take a look.
But the point about October 7th, and which is why this is important, is ultimately you and I can agree, and Francis, I'm sure, does too, the war in Iraq was a mistake. Lots of mistakes have been made on foreign policy. The question is, what do you do when you are in the situation when October 7th has happened? Right? And this is we've had people who have different perspectives on this conflict, as you know. Bassem Youssef was one of them. And I asked him what I think is a very legitimate question, is like, what should Israel have done? Forget about the occupation, let's accept all
of that has happened already.
All of that has already happened. Let's accept it. And I don't want to argue about it. I don't want to go into history because everyone's got their own arguments and blah, 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 blah. But it's happened. What should Israel have done? And we were just on Rogan's show, and I think Rogan agrees way more with you than he does with us about this. But he was like, yeah, if this happened to America, we'd be as bad, if not worse.
I don't know. I don't know. We could get into that. But let me just say, I'll say this first, and then I will very directly answer your question. But first, I will say, I don't think it's like, I get what Bassem was saying to you about that too. Like, I understand the argument of being like I could say the example I made at that Charlie Kirk event, with the now infamous Charlie Kirk event. But the comments that I made was like, hey, look, if you're pro-life, it's not like incumbent on you to have a plan for the baby's education or daycare or something like that. Like, you could just say, I'm against this option because I find this morally unacceptable. And then you figure it out for the rest. So like, my point is, like, you can't just oppose what Israel did to Gaza and not have to come up with a solution. But I think it's also a fair question to ask. Well, I think it's fine to say this is morally over the line.
No, not really, because ultimately they have to do something.
Okay, well, fine. But no, I also, saying that, I also think it's an interesting question and kind of a thought experiment. So I can go to October 8th. I can't change anything that's happened before that. I have to inherit that world. Yeah. And then what would we do after October 8th? Well, look, I do think, first and foremost, I think Netanyahu should have resigned in disgrace. So back to the
Netanyahu's resigned in disgrace.
Dave Smith
is Prime Minister of Israel.
Well, look, I would say that I think there are, again, like, even with like what you're talking about with Rogan, and where I think people will go like, well, imagine Mexico attacked America in this way. Like, what would we do to Mexico? But I also do think that, like, there's a really fundamental difference between Gazans attacking Israel and Mexico attacking America. Because Mexico, although obviously there's a huge power discrepancy between our two governments, they are a government with a military and some degree of sovereignty. And it's much more like a Native American reservation.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that.
A Native American reservation where we never gave the Native American citizenship, and it's not a Native American reservation the way American Native American reservations are, where they can come and go as freely as they please, and it's just not we never gave the Native American citizenship. We still hold them on these reservations. We've had a blockade around this reservation and an occupation going back 60 years. No, in that scenario, I would not find it justified for the American military to start carpet bombing the reservation. No, in fact, I think you would have a responsibility to make this a police action. Like, you have to arrest these people. And before Netanyahu, there was a terrorism problem since the creation of the State of Israel, partially the Zionists and partially the Arabs. But throughout the entire history of Israel, it was only Netanyahu who ever treated the terrorism problem as like a problem for the regular old military. It was always targeted assassinations, special operations. Again, Gaza is the most surveilled area in the world. They can wait these guys out. They can touch them. They can target them. Now, again, it might put IDF soldiers at more risk than sometimes. That's a thing that all modern armies accept. That we will increase the risk to our own guys to fight wars in more moral ways than we have in the past.
The issue is that the police action thing is really what this is all about, right? Because if you see this as a war, I mean, historically speaking, no country at war is required to provide aid to enemy civilians. That's never happened. But what I'm trying to find out from you is, you say police action, and that's, we had this debate, but not face-to-face, where we exchanged videos on this, right? And we talked about Native American reservation, and you say police action. You've got 50,000 jihadi terrorists. Jihadi as in willing to die for the cause. Is that fair? You shake your head.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't think any of us really know for sure. But yeah, I think the Israeli government was claiming something like that.
Are you disputing the numbers or the jihadism?
I just don't know. I don't know what the number of jihadists
So
who are willing to die. I just don't know.
It's the number you're unsure about.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the jihadi part. It's the,
no, there are jihadists, obviously.
They are prepared to die.
Yes, there are.
So you've got, can we say, just so that we do agree, like 40 to 50 or 30 to 50?
Maybe sure.
Okay, let's say
for
40
the sake of argument, sure.
40 to 50,000 people in a highly geographically concentrated area. Tiny area, right? Tiny area. 50,000 people with pretty sophisticated weaponry, actually. IEDs everywhere, booby traps everywhere, anti-tank missiles, sniper rifles. This is a militarized terrorist organization. Do you really think you can deal with that in a police action?
Well, I think you can certainly deal with it with targeted assassinations, special operations, the way Israel's dealt with their terrorism problem for their entire existence.
But how do you police 50,000 armed jihadis? How do you deal with that as a police action? Imagine you had the Native Americans. They were pretty badass boys when you guys first came here. Imagine you had 50,000 of them in Manhattan, right? And they just went on a slaughtering and raping and rampage, right? And then you're going, let's send in the cops. I don't know that there's anyone who thinks that's realistic.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know.
But tell me how that's realistic. I'm open to it.
Well, I'm just saying that, well, look, as I just said, Israel has a long history of targeted assassinations and special ops.
But it's different. It's different because October 7th is a different level of threat to anything that's ever happened before.
You kept these people occupied for over 60 years. You never gave them
but
citizenship.
We already baked all of that in.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just making the point that whether you think it's logistically difficult to do or not, the truth is that they just destroyed the entire strip.
I don't think it's
and Hamas hasn't been eradicated anyway.
But that's I agree with. But what I'm saying is it's not logistically difficult. I just think it's wishful thinking to imagine that a threat. So here's how I see it, and you tell me where you think I'm wrong.
Sure.
October 7th happens. If you're the Prime Minister of Israel, you shit yourself. You go, fuck, we're being invaded. Our people are being slaughtered. You might also be worried about the blowback on you. You were in charge. I hear all the things that I think you might say. And then you go, we can't live with this. That's what any president or prime minister of a country that had been invaded in that way would say. We cannot have this on our doorstep. I don't care about history. I don't care who's right, who's wrong. We can't have this, right? The people who did this, the people who funded this, the people who orchestrated this, the people who participated in this, they need to hand themselves in for justice or we're going to kill them all. That's what America would do, right? I think that's a fair claim.
I don't know. I don't know about that. But I mean, look, I mean...
So then they go in and they are trying to eliminate Hamas. They're not trying to go in with special forces and take out Sinwar. They're not trying to take out this guy or the commander of this. They're trying to destroy Hamas. That's what they're trying to do. Now, if you think that's not the right reaction, I understand. I think most people would say, if this has happened to your country, America, Britain, that's what the overwhelming majority of people would demand of their government. If the Native Americans had done this, that would be the nature of the response. I don't believe it's credible to say that can be addressed on a policing basis. That's a large-scale military operation, and there's no other way to do it.
What can be accomplished? Destroying Hamas.
Degrading Hamas to the point where he just can't come back.
There is something where you go like, look, okay, I'm sure Israel could look at October 7th and say, we find this to be intolerable, and we are entitled to a violent response, and if some innocent people get killed in that violent response, well, I'm sorry, but this just happened to us, and we have a right to do that. You could get there from the Palestinian perspective too.
It's different.
And although, there are differences, but
the differences are what matters here.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not sure they are, but go ahead.
Here's the difference. The difference with, say, you mentioned, for example, the Soviet Union occupying Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. When Eastern Europe wanted to break away from the Soviet Union, they didn't invade Moscow and rape women. They didn't take hostages. The difference is that armed resistance, look, man, we're men. If people came to our place and started putting us in chains, we'd rise up, we'd pick up a rifle, we'd engage in armed resistance. But when you deliberately target civilians, it's not the same. It's not the same as dropping bombs on terrorist houses who deliberately put their families in those houses. It's not the same. And that's the difference.
Yeah, there certainly is a difference between like the primitive nature of Hamas's attack and the barbaric nature of Hamas's attack. But at the same time, the end result of it is innocent people being slaughtered.
I know it is.
And that is, and if you...
But there is a difference between Nazi Germany attacking Poland and the Western allies responding. Would you agree? There is a difference.
There's a difference.
They both result in people being killed, but there is a difference. Because it's about the conduct and who initiates that particular phase of it, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, but I think that...
So
I mean,
this is the
mean,
difference with October the 7th. This is why it's a different category of violence, in my opinion. Because you've got a situation where a band of terrorists deliberately invade another place, and they don't attack. I mean, sure, they attack some
they killed a bunch of IDF people.
They attack some IDF facilities, but really, it's about taking Israelis hostage, raping them, killing women, killing children, dragging them off to the dungeons and holding them there for power. That's not the same as what the IDF is doing. Would you accept that?
No, I don't really think that's right. I mean, again, I think there's, if it makes sense, but I do think that, like, if you're talking about this conflict and you're going, put yourself in their perspective, the end result is that they're going through that at a much larger scale than the Israelis ever have.
Of course, but that's what happens when you start a war with a much bigger force, right?
But it's very debatable who started what here.
Well,
everyone claims they're reacting to the other one.
I know, but October 7th is a sui generis thing. It's a one-of-a-kind thing, right? But October 7th is a sui generis thing. It's a one-of-a-kind thing, right? And the reason this really matters is, you know, I think you paint a very important picture. I don't think enough people, particularly on the pro-Israel side, get the scale of the suffering in Gaza, right? But if I were that father, I would be going, why are we here? How has this happened? And what I'd be saying is, why did you have to go and do October 7th? Why did you make me put a weapon cache in my house? Why is Hamas doing this to me? We were living in relative peace. The Israelis had left. I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying it was the greatest place to live in the world, right? But we were living in relative peace. The Israelis had left. I could go and work across the border, blah, 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 blah. And now I've got IDF bombs on my head because you went and raped people. The scale of the suffering is something not enough people, as I say, on the pro-Israel side, give due credence to. But I also think that a lot of people who are anti-Israel, they use the scale of the suffering to confuse the issue of who bears ultimate responsibility for that suffering. And that is really the area of disagreement, right? Because we can all agree that look, man, I'm a father. When I see what's happening in Gaza, it makes me sick.
Yeah.
And it should make everyone sick. But the reason we disagree is that I believe the people who are responsible for that are the people who did October the 7th. And I'm on the record of saying this. If Hamas had attacked IDF installations, I was totally undecided about Israel and Gaza until this war broke out. We had Melanie Phillips on the show in like 2019, and I was like, oh, Melanie, you tell this great story about the creation of the State of Israel. I think it's a little murky. I was undecided, right? But when October the 7th happened, I was like, the people who are responsible for what comes after this is the people who did this. Because any leader of any country would react in something like this way, or probably worse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just think that the same exact logic could be applied in the reverse. And to say, listen, 60 years of brutal occupation, man, whatever comes after this, you're responsible for that. Now, I don't agree with that.
But that isn't true, though.
It's as true as what you said.
No, it's not, because I'm not saying... See, take another example, Russia-Ukraine, right? Like, I have Ukrainian family, I have Russian family too, and it's a tragic conflict. They're engaged in a brutal war, and it's a much more parity war, therefore it's much more brutal, actually, right? There's way more people, men on both sides being killed. If Ukrainians, who I support, went on a rampage in western parts of Russia and started raping women and taking children hostage, I would be like, there is no fucking way this is justified. There is no oppression, killing, Bucha
agree.
murdering in Ukraine that Russian soldiers have done, that justifies this. This is an outrage. This is completely unacceptable. It's a different type of thing to the conflict you've been engaging in. And if you do this and the Russians then go ham, you caused this, is how I'd feel about it, right?
Yeah,
and that's the difference.
Yeah, I guess I just don't. So certainly what I would agree with is that, right, like no matter what, and I think this almost just comes down to like individualism versus collectivism. Like you don't have a right to just kill innocent people, no matter how much you've been suffering. Like it doesn't matter, even if the Israeli
It depends
government.
what happened.
Well, I'm saying that say like in the example of Hamas or in the example you just used with Ukraine,
Right.
it doesn't matter how brutal the Israeli government's been to you. You still can't just go kill teenagers at a festival. Like it's not just a justified response.
Sure.
So I completely agree with
Right.
you on that. But then also, as I said before, cutting off aid to the civilian population who's war torn after 2 years.
How much aid is Russia providing to Ukraine right
But
now?
hold on, let me just finish my point here. Cutting off that aid is also not a legitimate response to like Hamas slow rolling the dead remains of civilians.
Okay, so
And
but is like this is what I'm saying to you. Is Russia's not providing any aid to Ukraine.
yeah, but also doesn't have a blockade around Ukraine.
As much as it can, it does. They
Well,
deliberately
Ukraine has been there's been no shortage of aid that's been getting into
because
Ukraine.
we're trying to help. But the Russians have done everything possible to cut off rail tracks and the supplies and everything. They're bombing logistical infrastructure in rural
I
Western
100%
Ukraine.
think that if Russia's
not providing any aid,
I
and no
agree.
one's saying,
And
why aren't they providing aid?
Yeah, but
they're
also
two
nobody's
countries.
defending what Russia's doing. Nobody here is saying like, well, okay, maybe not nobody.
Have you been to Austin?
Okay, fair enough. To Washington, D.C. Okay, fair enough.
If I was the voice of conservative America and someone praised Hitler and then came on my show and also praised Stalin, I think I might be like, what?
I would like there to be room for someone, even who has had the worst takes ever, to like not be buried by what they said at 22. And then one quick point, and I swear I'll make this real quick. I also think that like, you know, as I watched this, this whatever the event that all the Mark Levin and Lindsey Graham and all these guys, it was like the Jewish Republican thing through an event. But I listen to like Mark Levin, and it seems to me like he's doing Nick Fuentes too. It's almost the same thing. It's like Mark Levin is like discussing ideas. He's going, listen, you little cockroach, you think you're gonna come through me? I'll squash you like a bug, you Nazi scum. And you're like, you're basically doing the same thing, dude. Like you're just doing it from a different angle.
But I think this is the point though, Dave, is I think if you had Mark Levin on your show, you'd have a very different style of conversation with him as you did with Nick. And
Agreed.
right? And this is the same thing. And by the way, I think it's very important to say, we are not saying that if you have someone on your show, you've got to berate them. We haven't berated you. We haven't berated Bassem Youssef. We haven't berated Norman Finkelstein. We haven't berated, we didn't berate Hassan Piker. We don't berate people with whom we disagree. But what's interesting about this, and I'm not calling for anyone to do that, and Tucker and you and anyone else can have anyone they want on their show and should, right? If they choose to. But the difference is, when Tucker has Ted Cruz on, he goes hard in the paint. Ted Cruz is a state senator in this country, which is one of the reasons that you go hard at him, right? But on the other hand, this is a guy who's, you know, he's a serious guy. On the other hand, he has Nick Fuentes on, who says, I love Stalin, and he doesn't push back on him at all. And this is where people see the discrepancy, right?
But I just think this is a very weak comparison. I mean, listen, to have a sitting U.S. senator on your show who's calling for regime change war in Iran, which is what the whole fight was over.
Sure.
That is just a very different thing than talking to a 26-year-old streamer.
But
you
you can't have both, Dave. You can't say he's just a 26-year-old streamer while saying he's got a massive audience.
Because he is. He's both of those things. He's a 26-year-old
yeah, but you're saying
streamer
it
with a
to
massive
diminish
audience.
his stature in the comparison.
Somebody say like Mark Levin, who has been one of the biggest right-wing, talk show hosts for my entire life, who's been advocated for like several wars that have been absolutely catastrophic, who's now advocating for more. Yeah, I have a different tone with that than I do with something that I perceive to be more edgelord streaming. So you
don't think Nick likes Hitler, or you don't think he likes Stalin?
Honestly, I don't know. I just don't know.
Did you ask him?
I think. Yeah, I mean, I won't. I'm not going to publicly say what we said privately, but like I'm actually not sure he likes me too much, to be honest. But
You are Jewish.
yeah, well, I don't think that's his issue.
All right. So first off, that is exactly the question that the pro-Pally movement seems not to be able to answer. What should Israel have done? What would you have Israel do? They often say Israel is committing a genocide, but then they don't have any other solution. And yeah, he squirms around, and he tries to pretend like he does, and he uses all different types of examples. And then he comes to the conclusion that he actually doesn't have an answer for that question. Knowing, by the way, that he would be asked this question because Konstantin always asks this same question to every single pro-Palestine activist. Now, beyond that, what he says about Nick Fuentes is kind of hilarious. Yeah, I think he hates me, but I'm still going to defend him. Let's continue defending that guy, even though, or maybe he doesn't. I don't even know what he's doing. He's defending Tucker's right to have him on and then not question him because he's so popular, and basically he just wants to be in Nick's good graces because Nick has such a huge platform. I know so many people that Nick Fuentes doesn't ring a bell in their mind. You say Nick Fuentes to many people, who's Nick Fuentes? I get who's Nick Fuentes all the time. So maybe he's well known on Twitter, but again, Twitter is not the world.
If you look at the numbers, TV in aggregate is way bigger than us, right? They might be going this way and we're going that way, but there are way, way, way more people in this country who are not engaging in debates about Israel on Twitter
Sure.
than there are who are, right?
And as Konstantin points out, most people are not fighting about Israel on Twitter. And I think that Dave is projecting this weird Israel obsession on everybody else. Everything is about Israel. No, actually it's not. And I think most people who spend their whole lives on Twitter, in which I am guilty of that because, again, I'm defending Israel and a lot of the conversation is on Twitter, are basically in this echo chamber. And I found myself there too. And I thought wow, everybody is obsessed with Israel. When in reality, they are not. When in reality, most people don't think about Israel on a day-to-day basis. But it can feel like that when you look at the online discourse. People who are rapidly online, rapidly on X, are generally very obsessed with Israel. That is true. But that is a very small subset of the population. And that is why, for instance, the pro-Palestine candidate, I forget her name, but she was running in the presidential election, and she was talking about how she's pro-Palestine and all these other things, and she got no support because the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel segment of the American population is tiny. The amount of people that literally are obsessed with Palestine and have it as their main issue and have Israel as their main issue is not that big. It's just not that big. Now, at this point, is it getting bigger? Is it heading this way? That is true. But I don't think that you can win elections by hating Israel and talking about how you hate the Jews. You just can't. You can win a few voters. You can have a few groypers on your side. You can have a few rabid fans that show up to every single stream, but you're not going to actually, win a wide subset of the population in that way. And so just great job there by Konstantin Kisin asking those questions, and, as well as Dave Smith for, actually showing up and having this conversation. I think that it was relatively peaceful and a good conversation. For those who want to listen to the full thing, go to Trigonometry's YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.